And this is the Compass app. And here you can see some polished wood and some brass fixtures. And so when you hold it in your hand, it feels like a real compass as you move around in different directions. So here's a metronome app from Steinway & Sons. And you can use it to keep track of the rhythm and tempo when you're practicing an instrument. Because they're using really expensive looking wood, and the bottom area looks like a precise tool, it would feel right at home on top of one of their fancy grand pianos. So this is Hipstamatic. It's an app that comes with all sorts of filters to give your photos a vintage look. And their app looks like a real toy film camera made out of plastic. And on the back, it's even got a film slot, a flash switch, and a viewfinder to compose your shot. Every pixel was paid attention to here. This is Notes on the iPad. Just like the iPhone, it looks like a real notepad, but in landscape view, it's sitting on top of a nice executive leather binder. If there was just a standard list view on the left side, the whole association with a real-world object would be diminished. When you model your app after an object, you need to go the full distance and make sure every pixel on the screen feels authentic. And this is MathBoard, an app that mimics a classroom chalkboard to help students learn basic arithmetic. They really paid attention to every detail, from the different chalk colors to the wood trim to the eraser. And they even left some chalk residue on the slate to make it really feel like you're in a classroom setting. And here's a really great app called DJ that looks like a real set of turntables. Right away, you know how to interact with the app. The records really spin, and the fader and level meters are right where you'd expect them to be. And this app lets DJs feel right at home mixing music from their iTunes library right on their iPad. So not all apps have real-world objects to get modeled after. And depending on what your app is used for, it's not always appropriate. Still, your users will appreciate it if you put the time into the graphics and layout. Most of the functionality in our weather app could have been built using standard list views, but the use of custom graphics makes it more useful and engaging. And many people I know add cities to their iPhone right when they get it, just to see the graphics. And here's a cookie baking app from Martha Stewart. This could have easily been a list or grid view of cookie names. Instead, all of the recipes are showcased as photos on what their design team calls the cookie runway. And as you swipe in either direction, you can see more and more cookies. And when you tap on one, it zooms up and you can view the recipe. They've done a great job making users want to interact with this app. If you're utilizing Game Center, try to integrate the leaderboard and achievement screens with the theme of your game. Astronaut is a fun arcade game where you try to jump from planet to planet and explore the galaxy. As you can see, it's got a futuristic, space-age UI. And since the standard green felt of Game Center would feel really out of place inside this app, they've customized the leaderboard and achievements to fit right in outer space. And here's Flight Control on the iPad. This is an Apple Design Award-winning game where you act as an air traffic controller and try to land planes on the runway. They've incorporated the Game Center achievements with the rest of the UI and made it look like a pilot's logbook. It's absolutely critical that your app has a beautiful icon. Your icon gives users the first impression of your app, and right away they'll judge how much care and consideration you put into the overall experience. On the App Store, users are much more willing to purchase and download an app with a better icon if there are several other similar apps. Designing an app icon is a specialized task, so I recommend hiring a professional designer if you don't have the proper experience yourself. The app icon should give users a clue of what your app does. It doesn't need to be literal or even match the UI of the app itself. It just needs to relate to the general functionality of what your app does. Our YouTube icon looks like an old wooden television set. And when you see this icon, you automatically assume that it's an app for watching videos. It doesn't matter that you watch user-submitted videos rather than television programs. What's more important is that users associate the graphic with a concept they're familiar with. The iPod app icon shows a click wheel iPod, even though it's really the iPhone or the iPad that's going to be the device playing the music. However, the graphic is so recognizable that it immediately clues the user of what the app's functionality will be, accessing your iPod library. Most iPhone and iPad users have downloaded many apps from the App Store. To stand out on the springboard, your icon needs to be instantly recognizable. Using bold colors and limiting the complexity will help make sure your app stands out, even if it's placed inside of a folder where a user has to page between many different screens. If you use too many shapes and try to do too much, it won't read well at the small size. Here's the icon for Things. This is a great task manager app, and it's also an Apple Design Award winner. The big check is clearly visible, and it's easy to find when swiping through pages of apps on the device. The bright blue color matches their app's branding, and the concept of a check references a common to-do list. Instagram's icon looks like an old instant camera. And this is another app that lets users apply vintage film effects to their photos. But this app lets you instantly share the photos with your friends. And their icon uses basic shapes and has distinct colors, but doesn't look overly complex, even though when you look at it closely, there's quite a bit of detail inside. Cosmospin is a fun and addictive game where you spin a little character around a planet eating all kinds of objects. And their app icon simply features the main character. They didn't try to incorporate all of the really beautiful artwork you see when you play the game. If they did, it would be too busy and wouldn't read well at the small size. Instead, it's nice and simple, and by placing the character at a slight angle, it gives a sense of playfulness. So that was graphics. Whatever type of app you're building, whether it's a serious productivity tool or an immersive game, your users will appreciate it if you spend the time and effort to create engaging graphics. And when it makes sense, consider adding physicality and realism to your app so it makes a great first and lasting impression. And have a beautiful app icon. Not only will more users download your app, but they'll probably end up using it more as well. So in each of these topics, I covered a lot of material, and I want to leave you with some final thoughts. Ultimately, your goal should be to make your app useful, intuitive, and beautiful. And hopefully you can use many of the tips I went over today to get started with this goal. I've only touched the surface of designing for iPhone and iPad, and there's so much more ground to cover. The first step for anyone is to read the iOS HIG. Finally, it's really important to not sacrifice quality for anything. Every part of your app, from the feature set to the text labels to the app icon, needs to be polished, and the performance needs to be great. If your app is confusing or has features that are buggy, hold off from releasing it until these things are fixed. If you don't address these issues and instead release your app before it's ready, users won't wait for you to fix them with an update. They'll simply delete your app. So that's it. I've shared many design tips to help make your iPhone or iPad app really great. Be sure to go above and beyond what your customers expect and do everything you can to delight and impress them. Use these tips to design a product that you're really proud of and that stands out from the crowd.